It's time for Reason.
But politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Good morning to you. Welcome into the Voice of Reason right here on the Mid-America Network. It's a Wednesday. Good morning to you. It's an honor to have you along as we rock and roll, baby, through this day. We set the tone. We want to carpe diem all over this place. We, ladies and gentlemen, want to get excited because that's just what we do. Welcome into it. This is the Voice of Reason. I am Andy Hoosier, and welcome aboard. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, you're more than welcome to do so. I'm trying to prepare for the exponential growth that we're about to have on this program, on the station, on the network, on everything that we're working on. And as we are just days away from the legislative session, we have a lot of things to address. We have a lot of things to talk about because already the legislators are in turmoil on what they're going to do, how they're going to fight, what they're going to fight about, what they're going to have as solutions, and the great way to save face after the disaster that they ended up having last year. I do have to say real quick, though, that I do enjoy, and Happy New Year to you again if you're just starting to tune in, trying to get back into the routine, trying to get back into the grind, per se, as you start off your week after the holidays, after the New Year. I know it's really tough because that was really the last holiday that you get to actually take some time off for and enjoy until Easter. You have a good few months. You have a whole quarter now that you have to work through and grind, which, don't worry, I'll make it as painless as we possibly can on this show because that's what we do, and we try and keep it somewhat lighthearted. So that way when you go to work, it's at least a little bit easier for you. But it's very difficult. It's very frustrating. It's very angering when you actually have less money coming out of your pay, or more money coming out of your paycheck, less money that you actually get to take home in your paycheck because the state government says that they know how to spend your money better than you do. But if you are coming back from the holiday, hopefully, I want to know real quick, and I know this is still kind of the New Year's thing, and we're going to move on from it, but I want to ask you your New Year's traditions. Everybody has New Year traditions that they have for every year. Before the New Year hits, right after the New Year hits, the special dinner that they end up having. We ended up finishing up last night our traditional Southern New Year's tradition of having black-eyed peas with ham and fried okra and cornbread. That's what you have, at least in my family. We've always done it. My wife's thankfully had done it the same way. That's what you have for New Year's Day, New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. That's what's supposed to bring you good luck. She has the tradition of always wanting to clean the house and having the house all spick and span and clean going into the new year because that's supposed to bring good luck and you're supposed to be tidier and cleaner or whatever else they say is supposed to happen. What is your tradition, and did it pay off last year compared to what you plan on doing this year? I want to hear from you. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. It really sets the tone for what you do for the entire year. And I know that sometimes after about a month or two, you really do get kind of burned out. I'm done with my New Year's resolution. I want to lose weight, but I'm kind of done and over that now. Where's the jelly beans? I really wanted to do that, but then I hit the big Easter dinner, and now I'm eating too much, and now I just didn't quite lose the weight. I wanted to stop drinking soda, but then I just really didn't get a chance to because it was very difficult, and I just really enjoy my soda, and thanks, but no thanks, I'm just not going to do it anymore. And the New Year's resolutions really kind of drop off. Yesterday, we talked about the political New Year's resolutions, but just to encourage you, just to enlighten, just to try and help motivate you, which is what the program's really all about, isn't it? It's really just about motivating you, getting you excited, and then being able to take you to the next level so that way you can do it. Not me, but you can do it, and I'm there to support you every step of the way. But I was looking at the Topeka Capital Journal, and they came across a look at Kansans in and around the Trump administration. Now, I want to use this as our New Year's resolution and an encouragement for us to continuously stay engaged. They see it as, oh my gosh, look how terrible the state of Kansas was. I have a question. When you are patriotic, you love your country, Yeah, the country may make some flaws, but you love your country and it's the greatest place in the entire world. I do truly, honestly believe in, and I know for whatever reason people don't, but I truly, honestly believe in American exceptionalism. We are the greatest nation on the face of the earth that has ever existed out of any other society, out of any other nation, out of any other country. We are the greatest one that has ever existed, ever, ever. And if they don't like that, then you can just get out. You can just leave because I don't care. If you don't think that we're great, then there's no reason for you to live here. If you don't think any place is great, then you're just going to live miserably for the entire life because you need to have a little bit of pride. Root for the home team once in a while, why don't you? You live in a certain town, you support those athletic teams. If you live in a country, you support that country. If you don't live in that country, then you're more than welcome to leave and go somewhere else because there's no reason for you to be here and whine and complain about it when you can be happy somewhere else. It's really that simple. It's the same with the state. If you don't like the way the state is going, if you don't like what's happening, then you can either change it or you can leave it. Now, Kansas is a deep red state. Predominantly conservative, predominantly Republican, I should say. Conservative is still very difficult to happen because obviously look what happened in the last session. But I am very proud of being in Kansas. I've been in Kansas now for 3 years, and I love it. Absolutely love it. This is my state. This is my home, and I really don't want to go anywhere else, ever. Why? Because it's a conservative state. Because it is a limited government, small state with a smaller population compared to some of the other states, to where you have the ability to do what you want to do. You have the ability to make your choices. You have the ability to do your thing without people telling you how or how not to make that happen. I am not a fan of bigger government. I am not a fan. Compared to Colorado, this is way better. I am personally not a fan of Colorado. I love Texas. I think Oklahoma is fantastic. I like Nebraska. I like the Mid-America region, but I'm here in Kansas, and I love Kansas. Now, to run a story to say that, well, everything that Kansas has done in the last year politically is terrible, except for when we reversed the Kansas really foundation of, like, smaller taxes, then that was a really good thing, but everything else is terrible. And look at all the people that worked in the Trump administration from the state of Kansas. By running a story like that, you're essentially saying everybody in Kansas that is politically motivated on the Republican side is terrible, is trash, is garbage, and we don't want anything to do with you. We don't like you. Because look at how many people from the state of Kansas are running and working and operating within the Trump administration. We hate Donald Trump, obviously, because he's a right-wing supremacist, white supremacist, whatever you want to call him, bigoted, closed-minded jerk that likes to tweet a lot. And we don't like him. We're supposed to be the Bernie Sandersites. They think, honestly, truly, that the state of Kansas should be nothing more than like another California or another New York. We just need to get with the times. We're still living in the wild, wild west to where we think that it's just a free-for-all for everybody to do whatever they want to, and we just get to keep our own money, and we get to have the freedoms that we enjoy, and we get to do all these things, and it's just a terrible ordeal, and what we need to do is change that. Now, I did say that you either try to change it or you leave it, and they're trying to change it. But there's a difference between changing the foundation of what we are, the traditions of who we are, what we are, and what we stand for, and trying to change something to preserve what we are, who we are, and why we are that. There's a big difference there. And the progressives, their mentality is to be able to try to change Kansas to what it's never been before into something that we should never be. Because that's their dream. That's their mentality. They're kind of like the extremist libertarians. And I got nothing against libertarians for the most part, except for when they go off in their third party and they go off independently and they just don't like the Republicans and don't like the Democrats, which I get to and I see why. But then trying to think that the libertarian third party movement's actually going to do something and they're on the purist ideology. No, we didn't like the tax reform because, well, the Republicans just did as many backside behind the scenes deals as the Democrats. Yes, they did. And it's still benefiting the American people. And they didn't like that. We'll talk about that actually a little bit later after the bottom of the hour. But some of the purist libertarians, who I would like to see come back into the Republican Party, but refuse to do so because they like to live in the fantasy world. Instead of saying, no, we shouldn't cut taxes because we shouldn't have any taxes at all in the first place, that is an unrealistic mentality. By saying that we're going to go to the flat tax just like that, look, I'm in support of the flat tax. Is it ever going to happen anytime soon? No. If you want it to get there, then you got to do the baby steps in order to make that happen by lowering yourself and weaning yourself off of the income tax as a dependency of tax revenue for the government. You got to do it in stages. But nope, it's not the flat tax, so I'm not going to support it because it's not good enough. That's who I'm talking about. They are just as live in just as much of a fantasy world, a delusional fantasy world, as the progressives. Because the progressives, with the 9-state tour that Bernie Sanders did last year on the campaign and talking about trying to change the country into a more progressive way, and we need to change it blue, we need to stop Donald Trump, and we need free healthcare, we need free education, we need free this, and we need free that, and we just need to tax the rich, and we need to raise taxes on everybody because we just love free things. That mentality is unrealistic. Not only is it unrealistic, it's extremely unrealistic in a state like the state of Kansas that is deep red with 1.8 million registered voters in the state that will never go that way because we dominate Republicans. We dominate with the Republican majority at federal seats and in state seats. The problem is that many of the Republicans now are beginning to go down that same road, not because of their choice necessarily, but because of the people that have hijacked the party. When we come back, we'll talk about what we did. They see it as a negative thing because they hate the state. We're going to talk about it as a positive thing because it's the momentum that we've had, the activism, the engagement, and what we did over the last year and a half that is really, really impressive for a state like ours.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Mid-America Network.
Ag News from Mid-America Ag Network. I'm Craig Meade.
Hey, good morning to you. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Mid-America Network. Appreciate you hanging out with us today. It's a Wednesday morning. Let's start you off the right way. What do you say? What do you say we get you pumped up for the day? Yeah, let's get you pumped up. That's our goal. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, I'd love to hear from you. Successes, activism, engagement, what we did last year, really over the last year and a half, in the state of Kansas, in the Mid-America region. If you're outside of the state of Kansas and you're listening, don't worry, I'm not just talking about right now, specifically, I guess, Kansas, but at the same time, look at what we did in the Mid-America region. The flyover area that we have in the country, Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, parts of Texas, a little bit of Missouri, I guess. This entire area, people fly over, they hate this area. They don't understand it. If you don't actually live in it, you don't understand it. They don't understand the agriculture. They don't understand the people. They don't understand the traditions that we have in this area. They just don't get it. They live on the East Coast. They live on the West Coast. They have their fast-paced city living. They have everything right next door to them so where they can walk outside. Half of them in the big cities don't even drive cars. They just don't get the fact that we like to live our own lives the way we do. We don't have to be in a big group. You ever watch the movie, and I forget what it was called, The Circle, I think, with Tom Hanks, where it was the company, and it was the technology company, social media company, and they talked about The Circle, and it's almost like Google to where they have their own their own little city. They didn't want their employees to leave. They didn't want their employees to go anywhere else. They wanted to be socially engaged. They wanted to rack up points based on how many different groups and organizations they're involved with and what kind of meetings they go to and what kind of fun and different parties that they go to. And they just pretty much keep them quarantined in this society because they don't like them to go anywhere else. They can monitor them, they can watch them, they can make them work, they can make them have fun because work environment should be fun and lighthearted and just a wonderful little thing. That is what the big cities do, and that's what really anybody outside of the Mid-America region likes. They like that engagement. They like that not having any type of privacy whatsoever. They don't care if anybody's watching their social media. They don't care if anybody's monitoring, like the government, their emails, or they're tracking on the internet, or whatever they're doing. They don't care. Because they're just one big happy little commune family. And once that spreads to the Mid-America region, then we're in trouble. So what successes have we had in the Mid-America region, specifically Kansas? What have we done? Because this year, as I mentioned, is going to be way bigger and way better. It's going to be huge. It's going to be bigly. It's going to be great. We're going to get tired of winning in the state of Kansas because we're not going to allow the left-wing media, the left-wing progressives to dominate the discussion in a deep red Republican state. It's not going to happen anymore. We're not going to allow it. So what are we going to do? What successes have we seen over the last year and a half? Well, first off, I find it ironic, extremely ironic, that the state that went predominantly for Ted Cruz in the primaries, at 48% of the vote in the primaries, 35,000 votes, Trump got 17. It was a 48 to 23% victory for Ted Cruz, with 73,000 people turning up total in the entire state for the primary. For a state that went predominantly to Ted Cruz, that we were so heavily involved with the Trump administration. And what I sum that up to be for is the fact that we get it. We understand that when it comes to a general election, the party trumps person, which is what I always talk about, and we'll talk about that again later on for the new listeners that are like, huh? Party trumps person? What? Party trumps person in a general election. We understand the lesser of the two evils argument that we unfortunately have to have. Do we like it? No. Do we understand the necessity? Yes. And Trump ended up winning the state of Kansas 671,000 votes to 427 with Hillary Clinton, and getting the 6 electoral college votes. That's what we did. We turned from a primary that went predominantly for Ted Cruz, that would have gone even bigger for Ted Cruz in the general election, and turned around and went heavy, jumped on board 100% with a president that we may or may not have cared for in the primaries, but we understood the necessity to get him into office, and look at what he's done now. Look at what he has done. He is one of the most conservative, one of the most engaged, one of the most active presidents that actually tries to get things done, that's within his control at least, more so than any other president that we've seen in a really, really long time. He's exposed the media to where they hate him, even more so than what they did during the election. He's exposed the establishment Republicans more so than any other candidate because they like to play along with the party lines. He's exposed it, and we, here in Kansas, the voters, the activists, and the people that are working in his administration, all of us, Kansans, had a huge part to do with that. How about Chris Kobach? Working with the Trump campaign, being the first one to endorse him as an elected official in the state of Kansas, supporting Donald Trump. Now what's he doing? Now he's running for governor here, but he's also on the Election Integrity Commission at the federal level. He applied for numerous different positions within the Trump administration, and Trump was considering him for a lot of them, and he would have been great for a lot of them. It didn't work out. That's all right. He's still on the commission. He still has influence, really working hand in hand with Vice President Mike Pence. We have Trump's White House attorney, Ty Cobb, who grew up in Kansas, part of the administration. Ajit Pai from Parsons, little town of Parsons. Ajit Pai, the head of the FCC, which we need to get him on this program, talk about some radio regulations, because that's kind of important. But he's from Kansas. He's from Parsons. Brad Parscale hails from Topeka, campaign digital operation manager for the campaign. And a lot more of them we'll touch on when we come back as well. Your thoughts and calls. I want to hear from you, the successes that we've had over the last year and that momentum that we get to use going into 2018. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
In the world of politics.
But if you're really angry, why in the first place are you not frustrated and angry to the fact that you have to spend $250 to $600 of your own cash to be able to provide resources in the classroom?
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. Good Wednesday morning to you. Appreciate you hanging out with us today. It's a big day. It's a great day. Let's make it a good one, shall we? Carpe diem all over this place, baby. That's what it's all about, and I want to hear from you. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, you can shoot me a message all over social media on Facebook, the Voice of Reason page, the KQAM page. You can shoot me a private message. You don't have to put it public if you want to. You can email me, andy@kqamradio.com. On the Twitter, @Hoosier Reason, which, by the way, I do enjoy. I have to admit, I have been enjoying the Donald Trump tweets as of lately. It is kind of entertaining to listen, to watch, and to follow. And the panic, not only just the tweet, but just the response to the tweets, the panic that they have every day when everybody starts freaking out about it, and then the media starts talking about it. And it's the media cycle. It's very easy for the media just to say, oh, look at what Donald Trump tweeted today. You can see the lack of journalistic reporting that they actually have in journalism, if you want to call it that, in the media in today's times. Also, we do have the Facebook Live feed that is rolling today. We do appreciate you hanging out on that. Leave a comment, like it, share it on your page. Let's grow it. We are the fastest growing radio show in the entire Mid-America region, and it's because of you, which we love and appreciate very, very much. So thank you for that. 316-721-8255. The successes that Kansas had, especially last year and over the last couple of years, as we talk about activism. Now, at the statewide level, we've seen not as many successes on the conservative front, but at the same time, now we have the energy at the federal level. Let's make the change at the state level. We have to remember that when we did the major tax reform in 2012 with Governor Sam Brownback, we have to remember that at the exact same time that was happening, President Barack Obama was doing the tax reform at his level, raising taxes. He was spending more. He was doing stimulus packages. And I know the progressives, it's very, very easy for them just to blame one person because they love building, like we mentioned yesterday, building the scarecrow, not attacking the issue directly, but creating the other alternative world about how much they hate him, how much he's a terrible person, and then attacking him personally because it makes them feel better because they are the bullies. They are the bullies on the playground, the progressives, the media, many of the Democrats, and notice how I mentioned the difference between Democrat and progressive. There's an ideology versus a party. The party sometimes falls into the ideology, but the ideology doesn't always cover the party. There's a big difference there. The progressives themselves, the liberals, they are bullies on the playground that like to push you down when you're hurt. They're the ones that when you play kickball with them and you end up tripping and scrape your knee, then you can't run very fast and they slug you right in that, not just hit you with the ball, but they slug you right in the face with it, and then you fall down and then they slug you with it again just to feel better about themselves. That is the progressives. They're bullies, and we're not going to stand for it anymore. We're going to be the geeky kid who got bullied all the time, who's going to stand up and actually it's going to be like the Christmas Story all over again, where you finally tackle them and use your hands. And that's what we're going to do because we're tired of it. We're sick and tired of the bully. We're not going to say uncle anymore. Now that we've got the success at the federal level, now we can do the success at the statewide level. We are going to reverse these tax increases. You, everybody that's working right now, that's getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning, trying to start your day, yeah, you're not very happy about the fact that you see less in your paycheck. We're going to get you your tax money back. There's just no other way to it. We will get you your tax money back into your pocket because you know how to spend it more. If you're on the lower side of the income and you want the free goodies and you want the free subsidized programs, I understand that. But what's better, for you to live off the government dime for the rest of your life and not move an inch in success, or is it for you to be able to grow, to be able to invest in yourself, to be able to get educated, to be able to move up, to be able to find job opportunities because the opportunities are actually there because the businesses are not being strained by taxes. We're not going to allow the bullies to control us anymore. That's the momentum we got to use. It's the blend and the mixture between happy of success and riding the high, between frustrated with some of the failures and being motivated because we're not here to take part, we're here to take over. From the great words of Conor McGregor. Chris Kobach, working at the federal level. Brad Parscale from Topeka, the campaign's digital operations manager during the campaign of President Trump. Katrina Pearson, Trump's spokesperson. Trump's White House attorney, Ty Cobb, grew up in Kansas. Ajit Pai from Parsons, head of the FCC. Former Congressman Mike Pompeo, now head of the CIA. We have Jerry Moran, who's actually, in this story, according to them, has been on the alternative side trying to block many of Trump's administration ideas, but still the same, has been heavily involved. U.S. Senator Bob Dole, former Senator Bob Dole, that's had a lot of influence, a lot of things that's happened. Alan Cobb, who's now the head of the Kansas Chamber of Commerce. We're going to have him on the show actually next week, who was the director for the Trump campaign for the state of Kansas, who is worked very, very closely with Corey Lewandowski, the White House advisor to President Trump, and was candidate for the 4th congressional seat before the nomination of Ron Estes. That's what we've done in this state at the federal level, just during a federal election, with us having a say in it. We've gotten to do that. Is that good? Absolutely, that's good. Now let's use that momentum. I know that they've stolen a bunch of conservatives from us, but now let's use that momentum. Let's create the energy, and then let's be able to move forward. We have tonight, if you're in the Wichita area, and we'll plug this a little bit later on the show as well, if you're outside of the area, hopefully they have some kind of delegation like this for you. If not, you're more than welcome to come here to the Wichita area. But the South Central Legislative Delegation Public Forum is at the courthouse tonight. I'm going to be there because it's time for them to understand what our views are. And all the progressives always show up to these things. No matter where you're at, if you're in Garden City, if you're in Wichita, if you're up north in Kansas City and Topeka or Lawrence or wherever you may be, they always show up in groves because they're the activists. They don't have anything better to do. They want the free goodies. They want the higher taxes. They want to hate on the rich. They want to do the same typical talking points of every other progressive at any other time in history. They love to go and do that and be the quote-unquote activist and express their opinion and express their voice and show what they want to stand for and what they're not going to tolerate anymore. Because they hate. I don't know. I don't understand how you can live in a world full of anger and hate all the time. Let me remind you of something, progressives. You're in the extreme, not just the minority, but you're in the extreme minority. During the election of November 2016, not only did we beat and stomp Hillary Clinton pretty badly, number one, because the few Democrats that are in the state and the progressives that are in the state voted for Bernie Sanders in the primary, and Bernie Sanders ended up winning the primary here very, very heavily. That's not the point. Hillary Clinton still lost badly. Mike Pompeo in the 4th Congressional District alone destroyed Dan Gero, the Democrat opponent. 60-29, 167,000 votes to 81,000 votes. When we did the special election, after he stepped up to become the CIA director, and Ron Estes and James Thompson went into the election, if you remember, if you were in the area, and this goes for the same with some of the other elections in the state out in Garden City with the big District 1. I know you guys had a crazy election as well. But for example, here, if you remember, the activism from the left and from the progressives was insane. They outnumbered us 10-1 when it came to people on the streets campaigning, and when it came to the signs, and when it came to the voice, and when it came to the cries and the protests and everything of the sort. They outnumbered us handfuls of them. They were so excited. The progressive movement uniting to make a difference and change it to a blue district. They had money coming in from the local people all over the place. Ron Estes did as well. He had a little bit more money come in from larger donations, but he also had just about as many smaller donations as what James Thompson did. And James Thompson hyped himself up on that, saying that, hey, I got the people behind me because I had the smaller donations. Ron Estes had just as many as you did, so it really didn't matter. And guess what? Even with that activism, even with that engagement, even with that excitement from the left-wing progressives, because when we think activism, we always think to the left going out and protesting and holding signs and wanting to cause a havoc and cause scenes and cause anarchy. That's what we think of activism, but that's not what it's supposed to be. Activism is making a change. They thought they were going to make a change, and they didn't. They didn't do a damn thing. They ended up losing still 52-46 by a 6% margin. They still lost badly. Oh, it was a really close one. We narrowed it down. It was a special election, and the Republicans, 100,000 of them did not turn out compared to who showed up for the November election to vote for Mike Pompeo. 100,000 of us just in the 4th district here for South Central Kansas. We only had 64,000 people show up for Ron Estes when 167,000 showed up for Mike Pompeo. We lost 100,000 people. Just said, hey, it's a special election. I don't really care. I'm busy. I'm not going to show up. At the same time, James Thompson ended up getting 56,000 votes, which, by the way, was roughly about 25,000 less than Dan Giroux. Meaning we lost 100,000, they only lost 25,000, and we still kicked their butts. The progressives do not have the energy in the state. The progressives do not have the momentum in the area. The progressives, no matter where you're at, here in Wichita, out in Garden City, Lawrence, even outside of the state in Oklahoma and some of these other places, they do not have the energy. The only way they seem to have the energy is by the media telling them that they have the energy, is by their own party rallying behind them, trying to pretend to have the energy. They don't. The only thing we have to do is show up. All we have to do is just raise our hand, show up to the delegations, show up to the voting booth, show up and make our voice heard. And when we do that, we don't even have to try. And maybe that's why. Maybe the energy, maybe the comfortability that we have in the state, because we're going to win anyways. Doesn't really matter. You already anticipate that the Republicans are going to dominate. You already have that anticipation. We're lazy, which I don't necessarily blame you. You don't have to show up sometimes, but it is important. And when we do show up, we don't even have to try, and we dominate them while they're scraping and they're scrapping and they're desperate and they're furious and they're frustrated and they're angry and they do whatever they can to try and win. And we just, we're done. That's what we need to do with this legislative session. We are going to dominate. I am so excited about Monday when they kick off, because we are going to make we're going to raise some hell. We are going to make our voice heard to make sure that all that money they took from us this last session, we're going to get back on our paycheck. We're going to make sure they don't raise a penny, one single penny more in education. We're going to make sure that they don't raise one single penny in additional funding anywhere. And if they don't like it, oh well.
You're listening to the Voice of Reason on the Mid-America Network.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Mid-America Network. Welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen, as we rock and roll through the day. We kick off your morning the right way. At least that's what we try to do. The best way that we know how. The fastest growing radio show in all of the Mid-America region. And that's because of you, and we appreciate that very much. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, you're more than welcome to do so. What's on your mind this morning? The activism that you want to be involved in. That's what I want to hear about. What do you want to do? What do you want to get engaged with? How do you want to get involved this year? 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. We need to remember that when it comes to activism and engagement, when it comes to government, which many people just think, oh, government, oh, I don't want to be a part of that. And if you do feel that way, then I understand. But at the same time, let's get engaged. Let's do something about it, shall we? If you feel that it's over your head, that you don't want anything to do with it, that you don't want to partake, look, I've told you this before. My parents are so disengaged in politics. My entire family, they don't want to talk politics. They hate it. I was just in Ohio a few weeks ago for vacation and went to the family dinners, got to see everybody, and and they had a hard time because they're like, how is work going? Because they know if they ask, I talk politics for a living. They know if they ask, then I'm going to be sitting there talking about the latest current events and what I talked about on the radio and the politics that's been going on, and they don't want to hear it. They don't like politics. They want to turn their head and go the other way. Number one, because some people disagree with me. Many of the family disagrees with me. The other side of the fact is that they just don't want to hear it. It frustrates them. They don't want anything to do with it. So they just, I'm so glad work's going well for you. So 316-721-8255. What we need to remember is the fact that when we get engaged, that the more local, the better. The more that we get engaged at the local level, the better off we are and the better we become when it comes to politics, when it comes to changing things. We've always said that, and really this is kind of a libertarian aspect to it, the conservatarian form to it, is that the more local we get, when we take care of us as an individual, then we take care of each other as a community. If you ever notice, and let's look at the biker community, a biker bar, if you'll ever look at the agriculture community, if you look at the small towns, if you look at the rural areas where you're very tight, is that you don't need special social programs and government programs to be able to take care of you. You don't need that type of program and that type of spending. You don't need it. Because if someone's in need, the community rallies around them together and takes care of them directly. We don't need it to go towards a government bureaucrat with high taxes to get filtered through a system that's inefficient, to get a little scrap of the pennies that are dribbling down afterwards. You don't need all of that. What you need is just the community taking care of one another. And you need the money in order to be a little more secure, in order to do that yourself. And that's what we have to focus on. The more the localized, the more the individualized, the more that we actually do this at the local level, the better off we're actually going to be, instead of the government bureaucrat. And when we do that as well, we need to remember it goes along with the states. The states are what's going to take care of us. When we come back in hour number 2, I was going to do it this hour, but I don't have enough time. But when we come back in hour number 2, we will give away a pair of tickets to the Chris Ann Hall Prospering Liberty Tour, because as we talk about the local engagement, taking care of one another within a community, we need to talk about the states and the states' rights and the state's sovereignty, because when the states are doing well, the federal government's doing well. When the state actually has its budget and its finances in order, then the state's growing and it's doing well and it's flourishing. And when the other state's doing that and it's flourishing and it's growing and it's doing well, and then the next states around it's doing well and it's flourishing and it's growing and it's doing well, all the states are doing well, which means the nation as a whole are doing well. For whatever reason, the progressives love to attack the trickle-down system in the private sector, which there is no such thing as trickle-down economics in the private sector. That's a falsehood that's been told by the media and by the higher elitists in college and higher university and higher education. It's not true. But if they believe in non-trickle-down system in the private sector, why do they believe in a trickle-down system in the public sector? Why do they believe that the federal government is going to take care of all of us as long as we just pay a lot of taxes, and then the states will be able to get government grants, and then they can take care of us through social programs at the statewide level? And then because of all that, then you don't have to worry about it, because if you're struggling just a little bit, then don't worry, the government's here to help and they will take care of you. We're not okay with that. They don't believe in the trickle-down system. That's not even true in the private sector, but they love having a trickle-down system in the public sector. It just don't make no sense, and we're not going to allow them to spread those lies anymore. Hour number 2 of The Voice of Reason coming up in just a minute. Everybody on the western part of the state and beyond, have a great Wednesday. Everybody else, stay here.
It's time for Reason.
But politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Good morning to you. Welcome into The Voice of Reason, hour number 2 of The Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. It is a Wednesday. It's time to make hashtag Wednesdays great again, because that's just what we do, expanding conservatism, expanding our minds early in the morning. As we try to wake up, we sip on our coffee or our energy drink or our tea or our lemonade or whatever we do in the morning. As we think about the day, we also think about how we can make Kansas great again. and that's what we're all about. Welcome into it. Hour number 2. This is The Voice of Reason. I am Andy Hoosier. It's an honor to have you along. 721-8255-721-TALK. If you want to join in, shoot me a message on Facebook, on the Voice of Reason page, on the KQAM page, on the Twitter at Hoosier Reason, along with the Facebook live feed that is running on all of the stations that we broadcast on in the first hour and all over the interweb. And you're more than welcome to check that out on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com, go to KQAM. You can like it, share it, follow it, leave a comment, ask a question, whatever you want to do. You're more than welcome to do so. Coming up in hour number 3, we have Gregory Wrightstone. He is the author of Inconvenient Facts. If you remember the documentary, The Inconvenient Truth, that Al Gore put out on global warming, we now have the inconvenient facts, those dirty little facts, those silly little facts that the progressives despise. He wrote a book. He is a geologist. He's written a book on the climate, on climate change, or the lack thereof on man-made climate change. So we'll talk with Gregory Wrightstone on when it comes to climate change, man-made climate change, and his take on all of that with his book, Inconvenient Facts, coming up in the 8 o'clock hour. We'll also have a copy of the book to give away to you in the 8 o'clock hour as well, so you're not going to want to miss that. Until then, it's open lines to you at 721-8255-721-TALK. There is, and I want to remind you a couple of times today, that tonight, from 6:30 to 8 at the courthouse here in Wichita, there is a South Central Legislative Delegation Public Forum. There is an opportunity for us to show up. Now, I encourage you to show up in vast numbers because the progressives, the Democrats, always love to show up to these things. I've talked to a few legislators, and they say every single year this event, right before the legislative session, the get-together at the courthouse, the forum, it's always overrun by Democrats. Always overrun by progressives. The Republicans, conservatives never get a chance to actually talk at these things. Here's how it works. According to the Facebook invite for the event, it's from 6:30 to 8. When you get there, you get to sign up and you get to make a 1-minute statement to the legislators. The first 70 people that are there are the only 70 people that actually get to show up and actually get to make a statement. If you don't, then you just get to partake by listening. And they'll get there, and all the legislators that will be there will make a brief statement at the beginning about what their views are, what they get to look forward to with the session, and then we get to make our statements heard. I want to call and rally the conservatives to show up to this event tonight because I want to ruffle some feathers. I'm going to be there. I will be there, and I will be asking a question and or making a statement, which they're not going to like. But I don't care. We need to do it. So if you have an opportunity from 6 to 8 o'clock tonight, show up to the courthouse. It is, 525 North Main Street. Show up to the courthouse, make a statement, make your voice heard, ask a question, and let's actually, counter some of the progressives, because you know what they're going to say. How are we going to get the $600 million? Because we really need more education funding, and I just don't know how we're ever going to survive without it. And the Republicans, and they're going to direct this towards the conservatives up there, how do you anticipate to try and fight this because you're just an evil racist? When are we going to see another tax increase? Because we really need to see another tax increase. This is how progressives talk, by the way. We really need to see another tax increase. I don't like my money in my own pocket. Can you please take my money away, please? That's what we're going to hear tonight. And we get to make a little bit different statements, and they're not going to like it. I'm sure after a couple of the comments from us when we show up, there'll be the breath intake, the holding, the gasping of the air, because how dare that Republicans say that we don't need more education funding? So that'll be kind of fun tonight. You're not going to want to miss it. It's the South Central Legislative Delegation Public Forum tonight, 6 to 8 o'clock at the county courthouse. I will be there. Hopefully you show up as well. I want to read a piece because this is now, if you've noticed, the mainstream media, which we talked about quite a bit yesterday, and I don't want to continuously rag on them because we already got our point across and it doesn't really do any difference. It's time to focus on the positive and what we can change, not what they're going to do. But I want to read this piece because nowadays, the mainstream, especially newspapers, to them, they're actually doing better with their opinion editorial pieces than they are with their journalistic, here's the information, you decide on whether it's good or bad or indifferent. They're actually reinforcing the idea of having more editorials. Every post that I've seen lately on social media, as a link to one of their stories, whether it's the Capital Journal, the Wichita Eagle, whether it doesn't really matter. All of them that I follow on social media, on Twitter and on Facebook, all of them that they tag are predominantly editorial opinion pieces. No longer are they reportive journalistic pieces, but they're editorials. And they love them. They're eating them up. And they like to write their editorial piece on things that are just up and coming, the current events, and they like to not only write their journalistic piece, but then the same writer that writes the journalistic piece then writes the editorial piece to show their opinion on what they just wrote about journalistically that still has their opinion spun into it and webbed into it. It's very fascinating to watch on how they try and say that they're straight and narrow and that they're just reporting the information, and then they put their spin on the story, and then they write an editorial after it. But I want to read this one because this one, I agree, which is really crazy to hear. I agree with the headline, which I know sounded, it's ready. There it is. Here's what the editorial piece says from the Topeka Capital Journal. Kansans will be hard to fool in 2018. Yes, we will. We will be very difficult to fool. We will not be fooled again. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. We will not be fooled again. Last session was the line drawn in the sand. The largest tax increase in state history. The increase in our budget by $400 million. The increase in education finance by $200+ million a year, $400 million over the next 2 years. With that kind of shenanigans, we will not be fooled again by Republicans, by Democrats, by anybody in between, by male, female, or self-identified of something else. It doesn't really matter. We will not be fooled again. So you're right. But let's read what the editorial piece has to say, because I'm sure that it's very straight and narrow, and it very just, opens us up to focus on private sector, right? Yeah, it is time. We haven't done this in a while.
It's your Pinko Flaming Commie Corner.
Woo-hoo! Yeah, for the most part. That's about what it sums up to be. So let's read this, shall we? I'm going to try and get through as much of this as I can. Whether we actually succeed or not, we'll see. But here's what it is, ladies and gentlemen. The editorial piece from the Topeka Capital Journal. The Kansans will be hard to fool in 2018. If you take a look at AP's top 10 stories in Kansas in 2017, you'll be reminded what a fascinating and disturbing year it's been for our state. Yes, it's been very disturbing. From the violence and severe understaffing at our prisons, which I don't know why you didn't address last year. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not going to include my opinion on this yet. From the violence and severe understaffing at our prisons to the wildfires that ripped through the more than 1,000 square miles, to a cruel bigot's attack on 2 Indian immigrants at a bar in Olathe, the list proves that this has been a tough year for Kansas. I'm sure glad you're focusing on the positive. But we've also witnessed triumphs, according to the Topeka Capital Journal, particularly at the State House, when both chambers of the legislature voted to override Governor Sam Brownback's veto of the $1.2 billion tax bill. Our state was finally rescued from what's become perpetual fiscal emergencies in the state. Before this year, shortfall after shortfall by enacting a series of irresponsible and unsustainable half measures. The highway fund was looted, pension payments were withheld, contributing to our $9 billion unfunded liability, and the state agencies had to find a way to do even more with less funding. If I remember correctly, we didn't cut any funding at all anywhere, did we? We borrowed from things like 30 years projected out, but we didn't actually borrow from anything immediately. That's just, I digress. I'm sorry. But 2% growth every year apparently isn't enough. They had to do more with less. Welcome to a family income. As we enter one of the most interesting election years Kansas has seen in a long time, you'll hear about how all the lawmakers shoved their hands in your pockets and stole your money in 2017. But here's what we'd like to see in 2018. A refusal to let the historical revisionists lie about one of the most important pieces of legislation that has been passed in the state in decades. Historical revisionists. All right. Kansans shouldn't forget why Brownback remains one of the least popular governors in the country, or why our state is billions of dollars poorer than it should be. I'm trying to get through this without laughing. Bear with me. This won't be as easy as it sounds. The reactionary, really adverse wing of the GOP is already hard at work. The reality averse wing of the GOP. Okay. Gubernatorial candidate Chris Kobach is decrying the disastrous $1.2 billion tax increase and dutifully reciting a list of exhausting talking points like this one. Quote, Kansas does not have a revenue problem. It has a spending problem. Meanwhile, Americans for Prosperity have been bombarding voters with flyers to convince them the tax increase was a horrible injustice that must be repealed as soon as possible. Trust us, according to the Topeka Capital Journal, there's more to come. Wait, seriously? There's more to come with tax increases? You just raised our taxes 3 days ago. What more do you want from us? How do these critics suggest that we keep the government running if the Brownback tax cuts are restored? We have no reserves. We're still borrowing from KDOT. We're still putting off KPERS payments. We don't have a structurally balanced budget. The legislature will probably be required to increase K-12 spending by hundreds of millions of dollars in 2018, and state agencies already face significant personnel shortages. Oh, that's right. They'll cut spending. To these people, governance always can be reduced to 4 digestible words: lower taxes, cut spending. Here's a New Year's resolution worth keeping, according to the editorial. Whenever politicians suggest reviving one of the most costly and ineffective tax experiments in state history, ask them to explain why our economy was outperformed by the rest of the country, as well as much of Mid-America, after the Brownback tax cuts were implemented. Then ask them to explain how substantial their budget cuts would have been to cover the massive gap between revenue expenditures that inevitably form if another Brownback-style tax scheme is passed. Then ask them to specifically all the cuts they'll make. Trust us, they'll refuse to do so. That's the editorial. I'm not going to read the rest of it because there's another paragraph and it's just stupid. But trust us, they'll never be able to come up with an explanation on what they're going to cut. Let me give you an example. What's the largest piece of the Kansas economy? The largest expenditure from the Kansas budget. Cut that in half. I know that's a crazy wild. I know. It's wild to think about. Cut it in half. Highway projects. They talk about cutting from KDOT and how terrible that would be. We're spending almost $1 billion a year just on the maintenance of our highways, and we're still number 3 in the entire country for the best highways in the country for our state. Why can't we borrow from some of that until we get our footing? Yes, cut. Whether it's across the board, whether it's the scalpel, cut education, cut highway funding, little. I'm not saying let's just completely deplete it, but primarily when 60% of our budget's the K through 12 and the higher education, cut. But they're not. They're talking about more financing. They're talking about more spending. They're talking about higher taxes. They said, trust us, more's to come when it comes to the expenditures, when it comes to the spending, when it comes to the tax rates. Trust us, more's to come. Is that something to be proud of? We love stealing your money because we know how to spend it more than you do, because we are the socialist utopias who just believe in more money in the government than in the private sector than anywhere else. And then all of a sudden we'll just see the increase of everybody getting jobs and growing and everything of the sorts. And that's just what's going to happen, right? Yeah. 721-825-5721-TALK. I do want to give away a pair of tickets. WichitaTix.com is the website to get your own tickets, but we do have a pair for you. Chris Ann Hall's Prospering Liberty Tour. It is less than a week away. It's next Tuesday. It is from doors open at 5 o'clock. The event starts at 7 o'clock next week. It's $11.95. Still not expensive for you to be able to go, but you want to talk about state sovereignty. When we talk about getting our state back on track, it's kind of important to do so because the states are the ones supposed to be holding the federal government accountable. We can't do so if we're so daggone broke that we have to rely on federal grants and federal aid coming in from the government at the federal level. That's not how our federalist system was supposed to be. Chris Ann Hall, the She's the constitutional expert. She is the syndicated radio host. She's the president of Liberty First University. She is a gold mine of information when it comes to what we can do as a state to get our federal government back on track. I got 2 tickets for you. If you want to go, first caller at 721-825-5721 we'll get you a pair of tickets to be able to go to Chris Ann Hall's Prospering Liberty Tour. She loves talking to schools. She loves talking to individuals. She loves talking to everybody she can on how the states can actually get the government back on track, what the Constitution was intended for, and how federalism was intended to be in the United States. Chris Ann Hall will get you a pair of tickets at 721-825-5721 Talk. Caller number 1 right now. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
I love this. I love this editorial. This is the epitome of what the progressives believe right here. To these people, referring to conservatives like us, to these people, governance can always be reduced to 4 digestible words: lower taxes and cut spending. They say it like it's a terrible thing. They say it like they just can't deal with it. They hate it. They despise it. That's not what they like. Let's go to the phone, shall we? 721-825-5721 Talk. Good morning. Nope, I guess we lost them there. Give me a call back. I want to hear from you. 721-825-5721 Talk. What do you think of this editorial? And again, I find it fascinating that this is the headlines. It's not the journalistic opinion pieces any longer, but it's actually the editorial opinion pieces from this. If you've noticed, it's very, very difficult to actually have news. People just say, I want the news. I just want to get the news. I want to make my decision for myself. I want to get the news. There's always, and I don't know if there ever will be again, a non-opinionated type of journalistic reporting. There's always going to be a slant in it. Even if you're not even trying, just subconsciously, the way you're writing it, the typing it, the way you're reading it, there's always going to be some kind of opinion. I'm not a journalist. I'm not a reporter. I am an opinion commentator, which is what most political talk show hosts are. Because we're talk show hosts. We give our opinion on it. We read this stuff when we say, this is ridiculous. Because we can't stand it. What could they possibly cut? Trust us. They'll refuse to actually answer the question on what they can cut. No, you just don't want to hear the answer. Because the one thing that you talk about in the state that we need to spend on, $600 million, $1 billion worth. Look, we just increased education spending $400 million over the next 2 years. $200 million a year. Now they want $600 million in a state that spends $9 to $12 billion a year. They want another full-on $1 billion of education financing. Where do we get that kind of money? They don't care about the private sector. They don't care about job growth. They don't care that you can actually afford to take your kids to school or be able to get them the stuff they need for their athletics, or be able to put food on the table or get them new shoes when they grow out of them. They don't care because they think if you're too broke to do that, then you can just get on a government project, a government dime, a government plan, a social project, or whatever, and then you'll just be riding free. And then the rich will take care of it because we hate the rich. That's not the American dream. You don't like what American exceptionalism is all about.
KQAM. Defending the rights of every Kansan.
I'm not being aggressive, I'm being dominant.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker KQAM. Good morning to you. Welcome aboard. It's an honor to have you along as we rock and roll through a Wednesday morning. Hashtag making Wednesdays great again, because that's just what we do. The fastest growing radio show in all of the state of Kansas and beyond into the Mid-America region. We honor that. We love it. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us. 721-825-5721 Talk. I have to laugh. Of course, it's just like the progressive, the Democrats that just, some of them will just not go away. And the Republicans, some of them are the same way. Did you see this story that Mitt Romney wants to now run for Orrin Hatch's Senate seat. Orrin Hatch stepping down after how many years, and he's done. He's retiring. And Mitt Romney now thinking about running for the seat. When will you learn that nobody wants you in government? Nobody wants you. If he jumps into the race, he'll have an automatic front-runner seat. He'll have an automatic lead in the polling and support because it's a very deep red state, and he's very popular, and a lot of people love Mitt Romney. Give me a break. Mitt Romney. I have to admit that I was a Mitt Romney fan to some degree, not like hardcore, but I was to some degree back in 2008 during the presidential election because to me that was the most conservative, unfortunately, one of the most conservative candidates that we had at that time. And it was really down between John McCain and Mitt Romney and Mike Huckabee. And I do not like Mike Huckabee. I'm not a big fan of Mike Huckabee for whatever reason. There's just something about him. I don't care for it. He is somewhat conservative, but I'm just not a fan of Mike Huckabee. And I really didn't like Mike Huckabee during that race because he knew that he was losing. He was coming in third position. He was not doing well, but he refused to get out of the race, and he was tearing the conservative vote apart away from Mitt Romney. And that's how we got John McCain. I blame the nomination of John McCain in 2008 on Mike Huckabee because Mike Huckabee could have gotten out of the race, dropped out during the primary runs. Mitt Romney could have rallied the conservative vote against John McCain, and they would have beat him. But what happened was Mike Huckabee ended up staying in the race, splitting those two between Romney and Huckabee, and John McCain rallied with the moderates and the independents and with some of the not so conservatives in the Republican Party, and that's how we got John McCain because they rallied them while we split our votes between Mike Huckabee and Mitt Romney. And it was very sad. It drove me nuts. And from that point on, I knew that Mike Huckabee was not, I was not going to be a fan of him whatsoever, just because he was that bitter and he didn't want to leave the race. So Mitt Romney wasn't the most conservative either in the first place. He was the governor of Massachusetts. He had his own little universal health care system in the state. He ran as a Democrat. He ran as an independent. He's been all across the board. He's been wishy-washy across it. He's a business guy, yeah, but other than that, he's not. He's more progressive than what Donald Trump was, what we thought during the primaries. And I find it comical, absolutely comical, when Mitt Romney went to Donald Trump during the last election, tried to be involved with the campaign, wanted to be a running mate, wanted to be involved to some degree, whatever it was, and Trump turned him down. And since then, it was the bitter personal attacks against Donald Trump, how terrible he is, how much we hate him, whatever. And now he wants to still be involved. You lost numerous times. Go away. We don't care what you have to say anymore. It's like George Bush coming out and trying to make a statement now. Yeah, we liked you somewhat back then to some degree, but you're irrelevant now. Barack Obama, go away. We don't care anymore. Those days are done. They're old. They're over. Let's move on. Let's look towards the future, not looking back. Mitt Romney, you're old news, dude. Retire. Enjoy. Stick with your business ventures, but don't get back into politics, please. And just imagine what he would do if he was in that Senate seat. Just think about that. If he ended up getting that Senate seat, do you really think that would be another pro-Trump vote in the Senate? We already have a 1 or 2 vote margin of the Republicans in the Senate. Now, especially the Democrat ended up winning in Alabama, we really only have a 1 point margin, 1 vote margin in the Senate. If we got Mitt Romney in there, how much more do you possibly think that Donald Trump would be able to get done by having legislation being passed in the Senate? Real substantial legislation to actually really get things done, to get to the president's desk in order to stop Democrats and promote a pro-growth agenda. What do you really think Mitt Romney would support that Donald Trump would be trying to push? Absolutely zilch, zero, nada. But yet we want to support Mitt Romney for getting into a Senate seat? Give me a break. No, thanks. Your thoughts on that, 721-825-5721 Coming up in the 8 o'clock hour, Gregory Wrightstone is going to be joining us, author of the book Inconvenient Facts, which, if I can reach over here for a second, here we are. I have the book right here if you're watching the Facebook Live, and the book's in my hands. We'll give away a copy of that in the 8 o'clock hour for Inconvenient Facts, the science that Al Gore doesn't want you to know, the real facts on climate change. I saw the story on Drudge Report this morning, Bloomberg.com, America's power grid showing signs of strain during the brutal cold. More people using energy during the cold. Have you noticed we can never win? We can never win. If it's really, really hot outside, then we're all driving in our cars and using air conditioning, and we're using more electricity and using more energy, which is contributing to the climate change that's causing global warming. If it's cold, then that's still a sign of climate change because it got so hot that it reversed itself to cold because that's what the temperature does, what the climate does, and what the seasons do. But no, according to them, it got so hot during the summer that it's going to go into a mini ice age and it's going to get really, really cold. And then we end up using more energy. And then it's still our own damn fault because we use so much energy trying to keep ourselves warm. We can never win. We can never win. And by the way, this is coming from Al Gore, the same guy that has a large chunk of investment into Apple and iPhones and iPads and all the other Apple products that use how much technology? Oh, yeah, that's right. The guy that flies around on his private jet to tell you shouldn't be driving your car across the street. That's who we're listening to. So I see the headline on Bloomberg that it's always our fault, whether it's hot and we're using electricity to cool ourselves down or it's cold and we're using the electricity to warm ourselves up. Either way, it's our own day on fault. America's power grid now showing signs of strain. And because of that, then they're going to say that summer next year is going to be really warm because of our power usage that we're using right now when it's really cold. This is the seasons. Welcome into what's called winter. I know it's a wild concept. So we'll talk about that with Gregory Wrightstone coming up in hour number 3 with Inconvenient Facts, the science that Al Gore doesn't want you to know. We also have a book that we'll give away for that. 721-8255-721-TALK. Talking about some of the statewide issues, Kansas revenue for December. We like to look at this every single month on what's happening with our revenue for the state and our tax rates. If you remember, I'm going to continue to rail on this. I know that you're getting old and sick of it and tired of it, but I'm still going to remind you, your tax rate went up 3 days ago. 3 days into not only the retroactive tax that happened in July, but the new tax increase that happened January 1 of this year. So your state taxes increased. Luckily, thank God, Donald Trump did the tax decrease at the federal level, so maybe it'll balance out. But at the state, they're taking more of your money. Are you okay with that? Are you happy with it? I'd like to hear. But because of that, now if you increase revenue by taxes, if you increase tax rates, what could possibly happen to the bank account at the state because of that? Remember, there is something in the world, in the universe, whether it's God, whether it's the universe, whether it's just nature, whatever you want to call it, there is something called cause and effect, action and reaction. If you have adult time of two consenting adults having time, action, the reaction is potentially there could be a third party involved 9 months later. Reaction. If you go to work and work a second job, or you actually get a bonus, or you actually get a salary increase at your work, action. Reaction is you probably have higher, a little bit more money in your paycheck. Action and reaction. It's a basic concept that we've learned from the second grade, but something apparently progressives don't quite understand yet. They're still trying to wrap their head around it, trying to connect dot A to dot B. How do we get from point A to point B in the fastest possible way? Well, it's the straight line. Nah, I think there's some kind of like black loop or warp hole that we can sink ourselves into, and the wormhole will travel us around and be able to do something different. Then we can come back on the back end and get there at a quicker time. That's the way they think, because they don't understand the fastest way to point A to point B is a straight line. It doesn't really make any sense. I don't know. The headline, Kansas revenues for December beat projections amid federal tax changes. Even with the federal tax breaks, we're seeing revenues go up in the state. Why could that possibly? Let me think about this for just a second. If we increase taxes, what's going to happen with that? Oh, yeah. We're going to see higher revenue for the state. Now, they see that as a good thing. We see that as just using us for their own inefficient spending. But they're gloating. And they see it, and they're gloating for the fact that they see it as the fact that we reversed Governor Brownback's tax rates. Now we're seeing more money come in. Look at that. Our policy worked. We're not looking at job growth. We're not looking at expansion of businesses. We're not looking at new industries. We're not looking at unemployment rates. We're not looking at the stress on people. How many stories have we read over the last year that talk about how we're in a world now of high stress, where at least once a day, the average worker has almost a stressful breakout moment, where we see numerous people going on shooting sprees because they've snapped, because they're emotionally distraught. How many divorces do we see? And what's the cause of divorce? Family, money, and marital relations. The three things that cause divorce, the largest things that cause divorce: family, money, and marital relations. And what is possibly involved in that with the government? Money. If you're going to work and you got 1 kid, 2 kids, 3 kids, 5 kids, doesn't matter, and you're trying to feed your family with, by the way, the largest sales tax in the country, and you're trying to figure out how to take care of them, and the government says, we ran low on revenues, we're just going to take more of your money. And then they say, look at this, revenues coming into the government are really, really good. We really like this. Thank you, guys. Actually, they don't even say thank you. They say, actually, we need a little bit more. But when they do that, how do you feel? And yes, congratulations, you connected dot A to dot B, you raised tax revenues, and now you see more revenues coming into the state. We're not looking at unemployment rate that over the last couple of years under Brownback, I know you don't like to mention that, but under Brownback was the lowest unemployment rate in 17 years. Under Brownback, more people rose out of the poverty line than any other years. More people were actually going back to work. Industries were coming to the state. We don't want to mention those things because that goes against the narrative of the fact that we raised tax revenues. Now more money's coming in because people are paying more out of their paycheck. All of a sudden, things are great. The sunshine's running, the rainbow's flying, the leprechaun sliding down the rainbow with the pot of gold at the end of it, and everybody is all happy because we connected. Yay! They're very special. They connected point A to point B by saying that when we increased our taxes, the tax revenue for the state went up. And they finally figured it out.
You're listening to the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
I do have to say, just as kind of an analogy to put this into perspective as we talk about, I know I've been a little sarcastic this morning. I apologize for that. 721-825-5721 Talk. To put this into perspective, because they see it as a good thing. They see more tax revenue coming into the state, and therefore things are doing well, which means we're getting back on track, and the government's healthy again. So therefore, we're supposedly all healthy, even though they're squeezing us for more money. And we're not seeing a whole lot of growth. We maybe start seeing some growth residual effects from the Brownback era, but then it's going to kill off any of that growth, and then they'll still see more revenue because they see higher wages, and it's just going to be great, and they're all happy because the government's going to be healthy. And giving an irresponsible government more money is like, well, Dave Ramsey says it's like giving a heroin addict heroin, because they continue to ask for more money, and they're spending it unwisely. We haven't done any audits. We haven't cut anything. Remind you, we haven't cut anything in our government at all. We borrowed from other places, but they were like projected 30 years out, so it doesn't even really matter for right now. We're still number 3 in the country for highways. We still have our pension plans. We still have more education funding than ever before, with $2 billion as a record number for cash reserves. We have record number spending. We have record number administrators. We have the list goes on. So giving more money to an irresponsible government is like back in the 1930s investing in the Hindenburg because they think it's going to be a better investment than investing in the automobile. It's not going to happen. And giving more money into a failed program, welcome to the public sector. Welcome to the government. And by trying to invest in a failed policy like that and then saying that it's really, really good because now we're seeing more money come into it, that's the disaster we get to look forward to. We get to see the Hindenburg blow up, poof, right in front of our eyes again. Hey, government's got more money. Poof. No. Now we have high tax rates again. Now we're going to be like Illinois, to where we have 100% of our budget going towards, they have it towards their pension programs and retirements. We're going to have it towards our education. Either way, it's going to be a disaster. When pensions, with capers, and when education, and when the highway projects consume all of our taxpayer money because they continuously increase that spending, then what do the other 90 some odd agencies actually had to look forward to? They're going to be squeezed. They're complaining now about the fact that we don't have enough actual helpers in the state prisons and the state corrections facilities, but yet that didn't even come up as a topic during the legislative session last year. It didn't even cross their minds. If you're going to raise spending by $400 to $500 million, if you're going to raise taxes to the largest tax increase in state history, why don't you include everything that you want to do in there and just do it all in one lump sum package? At least the federal government does that with the bailouts and with the stimulus packages. They include all of it in there. If you're going to increase spending, then by golly, just do it. But we didn't. Now we get to do it again after we've already paid off our own debts. Let's go to the phones to wrap it up hour number 2 here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, Andy, it's Matt.
Matt, how are you, my friend?
Doing pretty good. Did I hear you right when you said that they didn't cut anything?
They cut zero across the board, nothing.
Okay, so I was working at a state agency during, this past, was it 4 or 5 years, right? So I've been gone a couple of years.
Sure.
Those folks in that office, now there's certain persons in that office that got raises, but the staff hadn't seen a raise in 8 years. We hadn't been able to do things that we needed, that in fact needed to be done.
Sure.
I know that there were other agencies that were suffering as well. I mean, obviously our prison system.
Sure, absolutely.
So I think a proper look at it, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm happy for that, is that it's not that we didn't cut. I mean, because it's that we cut in the wrong places. I think we're looking at things in a more, I don't know if it's like, oh, this is pretty, we can't touch this, and it's like, no, that's where you have all your fat. And so we see it in the social programs where there's a lot of fraud involved, and I'm sure there's other places, but I know for a fact that in our social programs there is an immense amount of fraud, and to hire some folks to ferret that out, I think they would, obviously, in my estimate anyway, they'd pay for themselves hundreds of times over.
Sure. No, so you're absolutely right.
It's picking wisely, and I think that, for the kids, and that's fine. But in fact, it's not for the kids. It's for society as a whole, because those kids are going to grow up. And so what are we teaching them? What are they learning? We have some fantastic teachers.
Absolutely.
But is our curriculum on the right track? I don't see a lot of critical thinking when I talk to young people.
And that's the problem. You can throw all the money you want to at it, but unless they have critical thinking and they're being taught the right things, it doesn't matter. And that's the misconception that we have here. Matt, I appreciate it. We're running into the hard top of the hour break here, but that's exactly the problem. We're spending it in the wrong places. I'm not for no government. I'm not anarchist here. I'm not talking about getting rid of agencies. I'm not talking about freezing them. But you're right, spending in the right places, which we're not doing right now. And that's the problem we have. They haven't cut anything. It's just being spent in the wrong places to where we're inefficient with it, but yet we want to give them more money.
Speak. It's time for Reason.
But politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Aha! Welcome into the Voice of Reason, hour number 3. The Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. It is a Wednesday. Welcome into it. We are hashtag making Wednesdays great again. That's the goal of the program. Trying to get you excited, pumped up for the day, trying to carpe diem all over this place. We're going to have to clean it up with a mop. after we're done with today because, by golly, we're going to utilize every moment that we actually have. Welcome into it. This is The Voice of Reason. I am Andy Hoosier. It's an honor to have you along. 721-825-5721. Talk. Shoot me a message on Facebook, all over social media. On Facebook, The Voice of Reason page, the KQAM page. On the Twitter, at Hoosier Reason. The Facebook Live feed that's rolling right now, and we do very much appreciate you checking all of that out. Like it, share it, leave a comment, ask a question. We are the fastest growing radio show in the entire state of Kansas. I'm really excited to get to our next guest here. As you know, the topic has popped back up, and it's one of my favorite topics to discuss because you just mention that you're not a believer, and all of a sudden the progressives panic. Oh, they panic. They think that you are an absolute nut for not supporting it by default because, remember, 99% of scientists by default believe in man-made climate change. And the tweet that Donald Trump made a couple of days ago or about a week or so ago about bundle up because we could use some global warming right now, to the fact that I just read earlier this morning with Bloomberg, America's power grid showing signs of strain during the brutal cold because the cold must have been an offset of the fact that it was really hot because of man-made climate change that created hot temperatures that all of a sudden by default created it to be cold again. And no matter what, it's always our fault. Humans, you're to blame. And I'm really excited to have our next guest on, as he is a geologist. He's been one for over 35 years, studying the earth, and may have just a little bit more experience than Al Gore with his Inconvenient Truth. And he is the author of Inconvenient Facts, the science that Al Gore doesn't want you to know. He's Gregory Wrightstone. Gregory, good morning to you, my friend. I appreciate you coming on.
Oh, thanks so much. Speaking of Al Gore, I don't know if you knew, he only took one science course in college. It was called natural science. He got a D in it.
Got a D.
He got a D in his only science course in college, and we're asked to believe him. And your bumper music, Won't Get Fooled Again, was really appropriate because they're trying to fool your listeners day in and day out with incorrect facts and just a lot of BS concerning man-made and catastrophic global warming.
Oh, absolutely. Every topic across the board, they're trying to manipulate us, and that's our theme for 2018 is we will not be fooled again. We have the momentum. We got President Trump into office. We have the conservative movement that's growing here in Kansas. We have some issues at the statewide level, but we're growing. We have the activism. We have the information and the facts on our side. All we have to do is actually utilize it, and we're going to be unstoppable. So I'm really excited about it. Before we get into the actual topic itself, talk about yourself because, Al Gore, he took natural science. I did as well, and I actually got a better grade than him in natural science. I'm no expert on this, but he must know more than you with 35 years of experience in geology.
Yeah, I am a geologist, and I've studied the various Earth's processes over my career. And but before we get into it, I want to tell you and your listeners, I didn't set out to write a book. I really didn't. I set out to seek the truth. Mm-hmm. And what I did as I delved into this, it was really shocking. What I was finding is example after example was what we were being told was 180 degrees compared to what the actual facts, the science, and data is. And I think the main reason is that these apocalyptic climate events that they're predicting, droughts, floods, fires, heat waves, famine, pestilence, increased toenail fungus, you name it, they're all based on flawed climate models of things that might happen in the future. Well, just like Rush Limbaugh, I live in the real world.
Yes.
And if you take a look at the actual data of what's actually happening, you'll find that these events that they're predicting to create these apocalyptic scenarios in the real world just are not happening. In fact, we're experiencing just the opposite. We're experiencing decreases in drought, forest fires, heat waves. We have increasing food production throughout the earth. In fact, my book documents, and I didn't set out like this, but really I think one of the overarching themes in the book is that the earth is benefiting greatly from increasing CO2 and rising temperatures. We can talk more about why that is, which is completely contrary to probably anything your listeners have heard before.
Oh, sure. Well, let's start at the beginning here. I watched a panel discussion when Senator Ted Cruz about a year or so ago interviewed and questioned members of different environmentalist groups, and they were talking about how, and they always throw this into no matter whether it's a social media debate, whether it's in government, but they always throw out this fact that 99% of scientists concur that man-made climate change is actually happening. First off, where did they get that 99% of scientists and the data that they track, all these different sensors in the ocean and all these different places that they say that is collecting all this data that's contributing to, or at least showing the data for man-made climate change? When did that actually start?
The most referenced, really it's 97% is what most people use, and that really came from a guy by the name of John Cook, who runs Skeptical Science website. He and his group of climate alarmists took a look at 11,000 plus scientific papers on climate, and they judged that 97% of the papers that they looked at agreed with the quote-unquote consensus opinion that humans are causing most of the temperature change that we see today. But if you actually dig into it, which one of my editors, and he was almost a co-author, Christopher Monckton, he and Willie Soon wrote a paper looking at that paper. They actually found out that three of the categories I would be considered as lumped into that 97%. Because I believe CO2 is increasing. CO2 is a greenhouse gas,
Sure.
and has some warming effect on the atmosphere. Don't be a denier. It has some, but I think it's completely overwhelmed by the natural forces. But yet Cook in his paper lumped me into that group of 97% consensus. In fact, I devote a whole chapter in my book devoted to that, so it really goes into it.
Well, not only the fact that CO2, I mean, obviously, like you mentioned, it does warm things, but it also benefits the vegetation. I mean, it's if we have more CO2, which the leaves and the trees and the plants and everything consume and then produce oxygen from that, isn't that a benefit to allow more things to grow at a better rate because of the fact that we have, CO2 in the atmosphere?
It is. And if your listeners I want them to grasp this one concept of why Earth is increasing, one of the main things, and why things like forest fires and droughts are decreasing. It's based on increased soil moisture across the world. In my book, I show information from NASA where they report, it's a beautiful picture showing the greening of the Earth. They report that 25 to 50% of the Earth, vegetation has been increasing over the last 30 years, yet only 4% of the planet is what they call browning, or loss of vegetation. So the world is actually greening, and that's actually due, the scientists that have looked at it, that I use in quote and source in the book, based on rising temperatures. Rising temperatures mean that we can hold more water vapor in the atmosphere, there's more precipitation, and then the CO2 fertilization effect, meaning that the plants don't have to suck as much water out of the ground. Those two things combined are leading to greater soil moisture across the Earth, which dampen forest fires, serve to diminish heat waves and droughts, and just we provide a beneficial aspect to the Earth.
Here's what I don't understand, and maybe you can help me out with this. If climate change supposedly was happening by man-made climate change, what we were doing, producing from the smokestacks, from the industrialization, so on and so forth, it's putting things into the atmosphere and killing everything off, and it's just a terrible, horrible world, and humans are raping the earth of its resources and all these other talking points that they have. If that's the case, why did we not see massive climate change happen in the early 1900s during the Industrial Revolution when there were no sensors or there were no filters or anything on any type of smokestacks?
Well, early in the Industrial Revolution, there was very little CO2 being added. We really didn't start kicking in large amounts of CO2 until post-World War II, mid-40s or so, and then it has been rising. But if you look in the book, it's very well documented. We don't have too much CO2 in our atmosphere. We're actually CO2 impoverished. The period that we're in right now is the Quaternary period. We're at 400 parts per million. That's just one number your listeners should remember, 400 parts per million. The average throughout all of Earth's history before this current period was 2,600 parts per million, 6.5 times of what we are. The food, the plants, and the crops that we grow evolved at 6,000 parts per million. Plants do better. I'm not going to tell you. I don't want to speak for the world's plant life, but if plants had a vote in the matter, they certainly wouldn't be lobbying for less CO2.
Sure. No, absolutely. Talk about the evolution of this discussion a little bit, because I mean it's been going on for a while. First off, the warming trend that we've seen supposedly, and us getting warmer and warmer, and then apparently we're going to fall back into an ice age at some point and do the reversal. But when did this actually start? Was it the 1900s? Was it a little bit earlier? Was it when did we start actually tracking this and notice that we were on a warming trend?
Well, the longest-term thermometer-based temperature records is called the Central England temperature record. That record goes back to 1659, but that's not the record the alarmists use. They use one that starts in 1850, and there's a reason for that. If you look back at the record dating back to 1659, what you see is the warming trend we're in started, and we know exactly what year it started. It started in the year 1695. Okay, and you may not have done well in history, but I think you knew that there were no SUVs or Indian-fired coal power plants in the year 1695. And for the next 40 years, the rate of warming was 4 times what we saw in the 20th century. So
wow.
We have this. And the key point here for everybody, your listeners are not idiots. We had warming from 1695 up to whatever, the 20th century, that was entirely naturally driven, 100%. They're asking us to believe that the natural drivers that have been driving temperatures up and down for hundreds of millions of years suddenly stopped happening at the beginning of the 20th century. Come on. Your listeners know that's not true. Hey, and I wanted to let your listeners know, right now the book is sold out on both Barnes & Noble and Amazon.
Wow. But
for your listeners, they can buy it on my website, inconvenientfacts.xyz, and use a promo code 1776 to get $5 off. So the only place you can buy it right now is inconvenientfacts.xyz.
That's fantastic. Well, it's good to hear that the book's moving pretty quickly, because this is information we definitely got to get out. I mean, I'm glancing through it, and so many charts and graphs and stats and studies and things that you don't see in the documentaries of Al Gore and the Inconvenient Truth, but, this is actually the real numbers to where you can actually see really what's going on here. We're talking with Gregory Wrightstone, author of the book Inconvenient Facts. Last couple of questions before we got to let you go. I know we're running out of time, but when this started to get politicized I'm a millennial, so I didn't see back then, but the 70s and 80s when they kind of started talking about the global cooling, and then I remember when I was in school in the 90s, they were talking about the acid rain and how that was going to destroy everything. Then they were talking about global warming because everything's going to heat up. Now they're just saying climate change because it's going to change, but we don't know what it's actually going to change to, so to speak. Have you seen this trend, and is it the same people that have been talking about the difference throughout the different decades and what was actually going to happen?
Yeah, one of the leaders of the climate alarmist campaign is James Hansen of NASA, and he actually in the 70s was a huge proponent of global cooling going into the next ice age. And I was a geologist. I graduated the mid-'70s with geology, and that's pretty much what we were told. Because we'd gone through 33-year cooling period from the mid-'40s that ended really in about 1978. And, there was a lot of talk of us going into the next ice age.
Wow.
And one of the overarching themes of the book, too, is heat is good, cold is bad. We just see a normal, when we go through these warming periods like we're in right now, civilizations flourish. There's plentiful food. People have time to dream, to tinker, to sculpt, to create art. In cooling periods, we go through periods of famine, pestilence, mass depopulation. It's just consistent. Iceland, in the Little Ice Age, lost half of its population.
Wow.
600,000 people died in 1 year in France in the early 1700s during the Maunder minimum. So, these are cold is bad. And if that's what these climate alarmists want us to go back to, things are going to be very bad for the human condition.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. It's Inconvenient Facts. This is one of the best books that we've talked about in a long time on the show. I'm so excited about this. Gregory Wrightstone, author of the book Geologist for over 35 years. It's an honor to get you on the show. I really appreciate you coming. I know you were on Tucker Carlson and some other outlets here recently. A fantastic job. And I really appreciate you getting us a copy of the book. We got to get you back on the show again soon, Greg.
All right, go buy my book.
I love it. Absolutely. I love it. Gregory Wrightstone right there, author of the book Inconvenient Facts. You can check it out. We got a copy we'll give away here in just a little bit as well. Don't go anywhere. It's open lines to you when we come back here 22 minutes past the hour. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason, 27 minutes past the hour. Welcome aboard on a Wednesday. Hashtag making Wednesdays great again, because that's just what we do. 721-8255-721-TALK. Thanks again to Gregory Wrightstone, author of the book Inconvenient Facts. We'll give away a copy of that here in just a little bit. But we do this every year, whether it's before the end of the year or right after the new year. Getting set. Owner of Steckline Communications, KQAM Radio, KGSO, the Mid-America Network, Mr. Greg Steckline. Good morning, sir.
Is it Wednesday already?
It is Wednesday already.
You know, when you're sick, you lose track of time.
This stuff, it's kicked my butt so bad this year with it. I never get sick. I never get the flu.
I generally don't either, because I farm,
Sure.
so I'm out in the elements all the time anyway.
Sure.
So I'm kind of used to the cold weather and those kind of things.
You get the immunity built up and all. Yeah.
I walked into Dr. Lynn's office yesterday, and they just laughed at me. I said, I don't think there's a damn bit funny seeing me come in here for the third time in 2 weeks because I can't breathe. My head's about ready to blow off my shoulders and everything else.
Can't deal with it. Can't deal with it.
Anyway, I feel good today. I got an IV and I got all kinds of stuff, so I'm back among the living.
Back at it. Back at it. We got about 2 minutes before the bottom of the hour here, but just the company itself with Steckline Communications, KQAM Radio, which, I mean, we've seen. I get more callers every day saying that I'm just flipping the dials. I heard you. This is awesome. I'm stuck now. I'm tuned. How are we doing?
Well, we've had over a year now of the FM translators, which I think has contributed to a lot of new listeners on the FM dial that didn't realize we were on the AM.
Sure.
Because a lot of people just don't switch. They just kind of hang out on the dial that they like, and that's where they're at. So,
Sure.
You know, for the most part, we're very fortunate. Both the FMs for KGSO, the sports station, and KQAM have basically doubled our audience in the last year. And so now if that will equate to double income, I don't know. But you know what? It's at least another viable means of people hearing us, just like on Facebook, just like on, you know, our new TV partnership with KGPT.
Yep.
So there's a lot of things we're working on. Plus, we're working on getting a taller tower for our FMs here in town. So we've got a lot of things in the dealing. Plus, 4 new FMs being built out in western Kansas this year. So
I love it.
We've got a lot of things going on with our company.
I am so excited. I've been both personally and career-wise and business-wise and company-wise, I am so excited. 2018 is going to be the year for us to blow up, and I'm so excited about everything we're doing.
Well, you know what? I got to give Mr. Trump a hand.
Absolutely.
I mean, there is nobody. He don't care if he pisses anybody off or not. But you know what? He can back up 99% of everything he does, and that's the kind of person I like.
That's what it is. Greg Steckline, Happy New Year to you, my friend. Looking forward to 2018.
See ya.
It's going to be a good one. Bottom of the hour news. We got some callers on the line. Don't go anywhere. We'll wrap up with you as we wrap up the show today on a Wednesday. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier, your personal political therapist. Give him a call at 721-TALK.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason, wrapping up the show today. Welcome aboard. It's an honor to have you along with us today as we kick off a Wednesday, starting off the day the best way that we know how to do so, because that's all we got, baby. 721-8255-721-TALK. Let's go right to the phones here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
This is Terry.
Hey, Terry. How are you, sir?
I'm good.
Good.
Hey, I love to get in a debate with the liberals about this global warming topic, and this is how I kill them. I always ask them, what are the 3 things climate can do? Stay the same, get colder, get warmer. They can't deny that. History's proven it doesn't stay the same, leaving 2 choices, colder and warmer.
Sure.
And then I ask them, is it not true you can't grow crops on frozen ground? we had better hope the climate, if it changes, it gets warmer, because if it gets colder, there's going to be mass starvation. If the growing season gets shorter by a week or two in the spring and a week or two in the fall,
Sure.
massive crop failures. And your guest, which I really appreciate you having him on, touched on that about previous famines.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's fun to just watch them squirm, and I actually had one of them say, there's just too many people in this world. And so then I asked him, okay, Adolf, which billion are you going to kill?
Exactly. Exactly.
And then they run away and hide, or they blow up, or it's sort of like throwing salt on a slug,
Well, it's unfortunate. I don't know if you've seen or studied anything of the Sierra Club, and they've come out openly, a little more so than anybody else, to where part of their mission statement talks about the population control. And if I've heard the story to where they've actually gone to numerous different businesses and tried to get the businesses to support them and finance them and so on and so forth, and how when they sat down and discussed about the platform, what they want to do, they want the massive population control to where we're all huddled into a nice big city, and in the rest of the world is just an open vegetation and natural state and the nature and the forest and everything else. So that way we're not involved with it, because we're, number one, raping the earth of its resources. Number two, we're harming the environment to the animals. Number three, we're consuming everything, so that way the earth cannot provide for us any longer. And this is what they want. The only way that they can implement their agenda, like you mentioned, is massive population control, so that way they can control what resources actually we use.
Well, and you hit it. It's about control.
Yep.
They want control over everything in our lives because they think they know better.
Exactly.
And it's scary when you have people that can't see the logic I just laid out, think they know better, and they think they can control us. That's the scary part, because they're largely not operating in the world of reality.
It is one of those, I've never understood how they support something like this, other than the knowing control of that, because they see the power, they see the potential for the control and power there. But if you're just an average individual who look, we're not saying that we want to litter the entire earth and we just don't really care about it, because we do. The conservatives are more conservationists because we enjoy hunting, we enjoy fishing, we enjoy hiking, we enjoy doing these things. And traditionally, I refer back to like the Native Americans, to where when you go and hunt and you do use the resources, you use all of it. You're not wasteful. Nowadays, they're the same ones that promoted the cheap products and the plastic and everything of the sort, and throw it away and then wonder why. And then all of a sudden we have to do this big green movement. The hypocrisy from the stats to the trends to the way the lifestyles that we have, all of it, the hypocrisy, you would think would just blow your mind and say, wait a second, this is the most absurd idealism we could have.
Well, and the other thing is they don't see the progress we've made. Your car today is 99.9% cleaner than it was in the 60s and 70s.
Exactly.
And so we're spending an inordinate amount of resources and money trying to get the last few tenths of a percent of cleanliness and efficiency out of what we do, instead of taking that same effort and money and going after other problems that are fixable. We've got the 99% of the low-hanging fruit of cleaning up our energy usage.
Exactly.
And going after that last fraction of a percent is not cost-effective. It's illogical. And here again, you have people that want to control us that can't see that. They're wanting to spend, our vast amounts of our money on something that is negligible instead of other more practical things, which I could go into. So, hey, Andy, I love your show. Can I make one other quick analogy from your previous discussion about waste and fraud in the government?
Sure, go for it.
Well, I used to be an estimator. I still estimate. So there's about 600,000 people live in Sedgwick County.
Mm-hmm.
Would you guess there's 10% of those people on welfare programs of some sort of another?
I would guess roughly probably about that.
Okay, so that's 60,000 people. Would you guess 10% of them are fraudulent? They shouldn't be on those programs for one reason or another.
Probably, unfortunately, right around there.
Okay, we're at 6,000 people. Would you say it's not unreasonable to say that maybe each one of those people gets $1,000 a month in programs, benefits, what have you?
Oh, at least. I mean, the $1,000 on the low end.
Okay. I'm going to ask this math easy, then we can work with it, okay? So that's $10,000, that's $12,000 a year. Let's just make it $10,000, make it easy. That's $60 million of welfare fraud that you can make an argument for in Sedgwick County alone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 60 million. Is the real number 30? Is the real number 90? I don't know. Why? And I know a lot of that money is federal money, but a lot of it's administered by state and local government.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
Why are we not going after the 60 million of low-hanging welfare fraud abuse in Sedgwick County? And you take that to the state of Kansas, that's about 3 billion, maybe 300 million. Okay. Why are we not going after that low-hanging fruit of fraud and waste in a social program instead of raising our taxes?
Because that's that right there shows the different priorities between the conservatives on us wanting to try and squeeze out some of the wasteful spending and the bureaucrats that don't care because they see more fluff that they can add by increasing your taxes. That right there is the big difference.
Well, and their votes. But 60 million in Sedgwick County, that builds maybe 3 new high schools.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and we don't go after it at all, but yet they'll come after me as a small businessman for punishing me because I work. So anyway, just for your listeners, just remember that analogy and think about that amount of money in Sedgwick County alone that might be out there in waste and fraud that our wonderful government does not pay any attention to.
It's a great way to put it there. Terry, I love it. Happy New Year too, my friend. I really appreciate the phone call because that's some great points. That's exactly what we're fighting right now. Trying to fight the excess spending. We're not talking about shutting down programs. We're not talking about trying to freeze departments or agencies. We're not talking about complete anarchy. We're not anti-government. What we are, though, is efficient government. And right now, we're not seeing that in any way, shape, or form. Appreciate the call very much so. 728-255-721 Talk. Let's go back to the lines here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, good morning, Andy. This is David. How are you doing this morning?
I'm great,
sir?
David. What's going on, man?
Nothing, man. I hate to be a little off topic, right? It's just something that I just read and seen last night, and then it was kind of reconfirmed this morning. It's rather disturbing.
What's
I
that?
want to start off by saying, do you think, and this is just as a compassionate human, not a Republican, not a Democrat, a liberal, a conservative, our priorities should be to look after those that can't look after themselves. And what I mean by that, I'm not talking about no dreamers, no DACA. I'm talking about the young,
Sure.
the veterans, the disabled veterans, and the elderly, correct?
Sure, absolutely.
Right? Why? Oh, why? And the only thing I can think of him proposing to do this is because it had the previous president's name on the legislation. But I just read, and my wife brought this to my attention because she is a CNA, that Donald Trump administration is going to scale back and ease up regulations and fines against abuse allegations to nursing homes. Basically saying, if a resident, as they're referred to, or their family makes a complaint of abuse towards the staff or whatever, that, hey, it's not, basically it's kind of saying it's no big deal. Right?
Well, here's the thing. First off,
hold on. So what I'm kind of confused about is what that's going to do, and this is where my wife's conversation was going, because she worked, and I'm not going to name the place because this isn't the thing to do for it, but she worked at a nursing home here in Wichita where abuse, her and another coworker reported abuse of another resident. They let the resident's family know, hey, we noticed this. You guys have to file the complaint, right? So basically, in a nutshell, wouldn't this regulate or ease of the regulations make it not more difficult, but it's kind of like, well, why tell now because they're not going to get in trouble for it?
Well, no, and we could take it two different ways here. We could take it the subjective way, be based on the details of the bill, which I don't have, and I'm not sure what the details are. If it's incentive instead of, it's kind of the same thing with trade. Either we're going to incentivize people to do well and stay in the country, or punish them for leaving the country. You can do that in two different ways. With something like this, you can either incentivize them to treat people well and actually have a high rating, or you can punish them for doing bad. It's kind of either giving you the carrot or whacking you with the stick. Either way, so I don't know the specifics of the bill and what they're encouraging or what they're looking at here on a theoretical or a philosophical stance here. I would say that first off, it's not the government's role to be involved in that in the first place, because the government shouldn't tell people how to run their business. Should they treat people right? Absolutely. They're part of the private sector, and the only way they're going to stay in business is if people continue to take people there to be treated and to be involved and to pay them to actually do their service. So it would be you and I in the public sector that would hold them accountable. And if they're not doing something if they're doing something they shouldn't be, or they're not treating people right, then it's our prerogative to say, you know what, screw you, we're going to go somewhere else and take our business elsewhere. And then they're not going to be there for long. I have heard that a lot of businesses and a lot of home cares, and I don't know any specifically, but I heard the rumors that they do treat a lot of elderly people bad for whatever reason, and they don't take care of them the way they need to. They don't bathe them as much as they need to, and it's heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking for something like that. So I would say the best approach to fix that would be, number one, to have the community hold them accountable at the local level in the private sector and say, if you're not going to treat them properly, and if we do sense any type of elderly abuse, then we're going to shut you down, because we're going to open up one across the street and we're going to actually take your business, and you're going to shut down and not have anybody. Second off, instead of the government, which I think even this, either incentivizing or punishing, should be at the statewide level as opposed to the federal level, would say, more so of an incentive. If you actually treat people well, if you have high ratings, if you're good with the BBB, if you're doing good things well there, then we're going to give you grants or bonuses or perks from the government standpoint, but we're not going to necessarily create the red tape and the regulations, because when you do that, even if it's with the good intentions to say, you're not doing it right, so we're going to punish you, that's still allowing the government to have control over an industry, and I'm not a fan of that in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I agree, but then what about in a sense of, because the facility my wife works at now, I can't be quite on the figure, but I'll just say a portion of them are private pay, right? But then there's others with government health care, Medicaid or whatever.
Sure, absolutely.
It's paying for their care. So if it's kind of like, if I'm the one paying for it, I'm Uncle Sam in D.C., and this money to pay for these people to be in this facility are coming out of my pocket, then wouldn't that be where, quintessentially that the federal government should have some say and oversight in it?
To some degree, but I would go to the sense of, instead of saying, okay, Medicaid or Medicare, we're going to send the check to that nursing care home so that way they're taking care of whatever, I would send it more so to the sense of, I'm going to send it to the bank account of the individual that's needing it, and then they can decide where to distribute it on what nursing home that they end up deciding to reside in. And so still the government, other than just giving the check to the individual and saying, go take care of yourself because you paid into the system for X amount of time, here's your pension plan, here's your retirement, here's your health care, here you are, do with it with what you will, as opposed to, well, we control the money, so we're going to decide where you go and what standards we're going to hold for your care.
Okay.
I'm not a fan of it that sense.
Yeah. Oh, well, like I said, there are certain things that I'm not a fan of that, they do in Washington right now. And there's certain things that, hey, man, sometimes you got to let it, like I tell my son with athletics, trust the process.
Sure.
Sometimes you might not like the process in the beginning, but that you're not looking at the beginning of the product, you're looking at the end product.
And with that, I would say, and I know we got to take a break here, so I hate to cut you off shortly, but when you mention that and you say, trust the system and trust the product is the basic foundational side of the Constitution, and the Constitution doesn't give the authority for the government to regulate anything like that. Since we do have a product like Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, food stamps, WIC, whatever the case is, instead of them controlling how you spend that money, it should be, all right, here's the program, here's your money, do what you will of it, and it's your personal responsibility to make sure that you're taken care of properly. I love the conversation, David. It's a great one. And I really appreciate that. I do want to take a break here, but first, I haven't given it away yet, and I think we're going to partner it up. I have a copy of the book, Inconvenient Facts, the science that Al Gore doesn't want you to know. We talked with Gregory Wrightstone here in the first part of the hour. He wrote the book. It's a wonderful book on climate change. We'll give you a copy of that, along with a pair of tickets to Chris Ann Hall's Prospering Liberty Tour this next Tuesday, on the 9th, 7 p.m. is when that event's happening at the Convention Hall at Century 2. They're $12 tickets, $11.95 at WichitaTix.com. I got a pair of tickets of that. I'm going to partner up with the book at caller number 2 right now. Caller number 2 at 721-8255-721-TALK. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
Congratulations to Rhonda for winning the pair of tickets to Chris Ann Hall along with the book Inconvenient Facts. By the way, I forgot to mention that it is a signed copy of the book of Inconvenient Facts, along with, there are 2 little stickers in here, and I got another copy we'll give away probably in the next day or 2, so stay tuned in for that. But there are a couple stickers in here as well that says, I heart CO2. It's kind of fantastic. There's another sticker that I do on a bumper sticker that I've seen. I need to find the pictures of it. I had my old car, my very first car. I've had 3 cars in my life, 3 cars total. My very first car will always be near and dear to my heart. It was a 1997 Pontiac Grand Am little 2-door. Beautiful. It was a wonderful thing. I bought it my senior year of high school, senior year of high school, for like $1,200 and $2,000, I believe it was actually total. And it lasted me for years, all the way to Ohio to college, all the way back to Colorado for school and for the radio, out to Garden City when I was out there, and then ended up breaking down out there. 395,000 miles on that bad boy, and it was held together by bumper stickers. Oh, I tell you, I had literally 50, 60 bumper stickers on the back of this thing, and it ran great. It leaked a little oil. It got the RPMs got stuck a little bit with the transmission, and it got overheated once in a while, so I'd always have to put coolant in it. But you know what? It ran great. I love that car, and I had a bumper sticker on there that I missed, and I really want to get it back again, but it says, I heart my carbon footprint. And I really need to get that again. But now you have a sticker, I heart CO2, so that way you can show it proudly of what's really happening when it comes to climate change. You get a couple of copies of the sticker along with the book, along with the tickets. We'll do another one probably tomorrow with the book and the tickets and the stickers all again tomorrow. You're not going to want to miss it. It's a Thursday on The Voice of Reason. Don't miss it. This is your show. As always, it's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM. Have a great day, everybody.